I'm going to get close this time.
Hello, guten Abend. Great cast today. I'm so happy that we have Kassem, Acoustic Sounds. Hey, Chad. Michael Fremer, Tracking Angle. Hello, Michael. Geoff Edgers from the Washington Post, second-time visitor on this channel. Great to have you here. Hello, Geoff. Yeah, we had a slight delay due to some technical problems, but now we are all fine. And maybe we start in this case with Geoff because we want to discuss about a topic, about an article he wrote for the Washington Post. And maybe for those of us, especially in the gallery, who hasn't read the article, maybe you can do a summary of what you wrote about, how it came to be, the people you met. Give us a brief overview, if you like, if you do.
Sure. I mean, what I did was I spent probably more than a year, not consecutively, but over time, just dipping in and out. As someone who loves music and loves sound and has always consumed it in different ways, I was very curious about what was going on with analog and records. I was very curious about what was going on with digital music. And I noticed certain things happening, like the boom in records, obviously. I also noticed how I was finding I'm technically average in dealing with technology. And I found that it was really easy to see the difference finally between like low resolution sound files and stuff that was in high resolution. And I found that interesting too. So I just started on this journey. I'm lucky I have a job that is a great blessing and I'm able to do these things without any real like deadline or anybody pushing me. And so, and the story came out a couple weeks ago online. Folks may have seen it. It had, sound clips in it and video and things. And then it came out in print this previous Sunday. I just actually got a copy here. So this is the cover, as you can see, Search for the Perfect Sound, which was kind of like ostensibly what I was trying to do. This is the front part of it. I mean, I was showing Chad because it's so wonderful when you get to do stories like this. This is the inside of it. As you can see, Michael Fremer. Yeah, there he is. He's sitting right there in a chair. And then, because this story is so damn long, it goes on to even another page. And, all these people and Brittany, this great record dealer in Cleveland. And so really what I tried to do is I was writing a piece that I was trying to basically translate to people in our audience. And our audience is smart, but they're not people that they don't know they might not know who any of you guys are. They might know some of your products, but they're not going to know all the characters that are very familiar in our universe. They're not on the Steve Hoffman message board. Most of them. And they're people who are interested in music because music to me, whether you're walking down the street with an iPhone listening to Tyler the Creator, or you're sitting in your basement with a $400,000 system listening to Art Blakey, it's universal. It's something we all connect with in some way. And so I just wanted this journey to be presented in that way. So does that help, Michael? 45?
I hope so. I think that was for the gallery, that they got an idea what our today's topic is. So is it safe to say when I say it is a journey into vinyl, and for especially for people who are on the brink of getting a vinyl collector, vinyl lover, vinyl buyer? Is that correct?
That could be. And I mean, it's also hopefully you can't please everyone and you can't be writing for everyone. But when I'm going and writing about records and digital and showing that there are differences in sound, that's such an obvious thing. I think I mentioned it to Michael Fremer early on, and he said, anyone can do that story. I'm going to use your fake Michael Fremer voice. Anyone can do that story. Any teenage girl knows that. Well, what I found was interesting is many of the smart people I work with, some of them under 40, they actually found it to be fascinating that there could be records that actually sounded different than other versions of those records. They had no idea. And I found that to be an interesting thing to go down. But then also, you know, going because of who I'm at the Washington Post, so I can call up and sit down with T-Bone Burnett and talk with him about how he crafted this Bob Dylan record that he put out that was $1.8 million sold at Christie's. Or I can call up Neil Young and say, explain to me exactly why digital is something you try to avoid. Or I could talk with Chad or Michael Fremer about what they do. And so hopefully over 6,000 words, we're able to get to a whole bunch of different things. I mean, I was just in a record store this weekend. I'm sure you guys have done this before. And there was a nice woman next to me, and I was looking at all this amazing stuff they had. And she said, is this a good record? And I was like looking at it, and it was Wax Time, sealed, Billie Holiday. She said, I love Billie Holiday. I love jazz vocals. I said, look, $20. I mean, I totally don't want to ruin a sale here for Chris. He's such a nice guy, but for $20, let's go over here. And because these records, there's like all sorts of weird things that happen to them. There's copyright law that allows anybody to make them. You have no controls over them. And in general, Wax Time is not something you want to go for. And I brought her over there, and we looked at it, and we found a beautiful copy of Songs for Only the Lonely and the Lonely, the Frank Sinatra record with, you know, One for the Road. And also we found Julie London. Same price for those two records as for that one. And I felt like, great. And I know really barely anything. So just being able to have that conversation and share that, she was very happy. And I think she's going to take those records home and be like, oh, this is something I can learn about.
Okay. Okay, so now that you have give us an insight, maybe we go a bit around and chat. When we start with you, what's your take? What is your impression of this article? What thoughts do you have about it?
Well, we always love it when people shed light on our hobby that, you know, we spend our lifetime working on and being into. I mean, it's always great when the mainstream media talks about what, you know, like me and Fremer have invested our lives into. We love that, you know what I mean? We appreciate it, and it is, you know, the great thing about it is, you know, like if we, you know, Fremer writes an article for TAS, The Absolute Sound, or Stereophile, or his website, or, you know, we're always talking to, you know, the same, you know, we're preaching to the choir a lot of times, you know what I mean? And we do that a lot, but, you know, it's nice to be able to talk to people that are just getting into this and educating them, you know. And so I really love that, and I love those opportunities. It's just that the thing for me is that I didn't like about it is
we were waiting for this, Chad. We were you were talking very slowly, and I felt like it was like a pitcher in the bullpen warming up, and you were right ready to get on the mound and throw the 98-mile-per-hour heater under my chin. So, all right, sorry, cue it up.
That's all right. It's all right. I mean, you know where I'm going. I mean, listen, you know, it wasn't my article and I didn't write it. You know, I can't expect, you know, everybody. To me, I guess, to start out with, maybe, you know, like what your theme was, or your point, you had your own point of writing it. And I'm thinking, my point of thinking about it is like, wow, this article should be about trying to get new people into this hobby. Is that not the point of the article? I mean, was it your point to try to introduce new people into this hobby?
I don't think it was to. No, I don't think it was to introduce new people into this hobby. I think it was to make people think about how they listen to music and why they listen to music in that way and what they've been provided and what is available to them. So I think it was really about searching. I mean, it was like it was my attempt to make people think more about sound and music. So and I don't really, hobby is a good word, but it's a small word to me. Like, I think this is wider than that. This is about a universal thing. So sort of, Chad, but not totally.
Okay, so I guess I start out by thinking that that's what the article is about, or I'm hoping that that's what it's about. And I guess since it wasn't quite what it was about, then I'm already going to be. To me, I would think let's get them into it, and then educate them, and then tell them about the odd ducks that have odd views once they learn about it, not to start them out with a Tom Port, which I just get scared that Tom Port's going to scare any normal person away from our hobby. Putting Tom Port at the beginning of your article. I mean, I don't mind that he's in there, and he's very interesting character, and it's a very interesting topic to discuss. Then you could write a book about him and his ways and his thoughts and all that. I mean, it's very interesting, but to put him at the beginning, it's almost like he was representing us audiophiles. That's how I take it. And I'm scared that we had a chance at bringing some new people into our, I say hobby, whatever you want to call it. And we scare them away with people like Port. That's my only thing. And then I think a lot of people might be like me. I just wasn't that crazy about reading all the rest. It's kind of like lost me a bit there, But anyway, that's it, man. But we love that the mainstream is getting into this hobby. We love the articles. I just I just don't want to scare people away from what could be a something that they're intimidated by to begin with. You know what I mean? I want to, but people.
Should I answer that, or do you want?
Yeah, of course. No, that was.
Michael Fremer. I mean, do you guys want to pitch in
no,
here?
I suggest
I'm not saying a word until I'm invited into the conversation, because I'm fed up with reading the comments from people saying, "Oh, Fremer's interrupting. I'm shutting up until you invite me in."
Michael, I think they might have said I was interrupting.
I'm just waiting for Michael 45.
I think first of all, I want to invite you in, Michael Fremer. Second of all, if I could. I know you have glasses.
It's not your stream. It's Michael 45.
I would like, if I could do one thing for you in the future, it would be to put a patch over this eye, and I would like you to never look at comments as something is going on, because I think you have so much to add to this conversation, and the idea that some random dude named That's Vinyl Tube is throwing you off. You've been at this for decades. Who cares about Loki Tio? Or
you have to do stand-up comedy. You have to do stand-up comedy and get heckled to understand that your genetic code gets changed. Any that kind of crap, you have to answer. Otherwise, what they say sticks. Anyway, that's another subject. Let's not.
All right, so Michael Fremer or Michael 45. If this needs to be formally done, Michael 45, can you please invite Michael Fremer into the conversation, even though he is one of the squares?
Yeah, but let me say some sentence. If you're on YouTube, this belongs to YouTube, and Michael knows that, and he does it great, and so I don't think we have to talk about that now. So if you want to get an answer to chat, and then Michael Fremer gets his take on.
We're talking, folks, just to catch you up. So in my article, the lead section of my article is, a lot of times when we're writing, we have scenes and we show things. And so my lead section is Tom Port. Here's a picture of Tom Port sitting in his room. And so Tom Port, for the uninitiated, He is a record seller in California. And
is he in California?
It's not
Well, no.
in California. Shut up. I'll wait. Just like
Okay.
No, you're right. Come on.
I just want to
No,
introduce.
somebody told me he's not
Not
in California. I think he met a mail order bride or something, and he's not in California.
Be careful, Chad.
Chad, I thought we were like, this was like the high level of conversation. I've met Tom's wife. She's a lovely person, Judy. But more importantly, Tom Port, when I did this story, as you know, I spent a lot of time on this story, and I met Tom Port when I was in California on a reporting trip earlier, more than a year ago, probably. And then I went back to film a video. Tom Port was in the process when I filmed the second video of moving. I think he's 68 years old. He is sort of, he's involved in the business, but he's retiring. There's a guy named Fred there who's really taking over. And there's a staff of people at Better Records. So when I was there the second time, Tom actually had some moving boxes there. And I believe he's moved since then. I'm just trying to give people a geographic understanding.
But I mean, you knew about this before the article?
I knew that he was going to be moving, yes.
Did you mention that?
No, but why would I do that, Chad?
Well, I mean, it'd be hard for somebody that listens to records for a living and proclaims that they're hot pokers to, how does he listen in Atlanta, Georgia, and then put his blessing on the record?
Well, Better Records is, I mean, I'm sure that if something happened with, you and you had to move somewhere.
But I don't listen to each record and declare it like that's a personal thing. I would need to be at a location.
Well, I just want to give, first I want to summarize who Tom Port is for folks who might not know. Maybe all
then I'll
of you do
summarize.
know.
After you're finished summarizing him, I'll summarize him for you.
Okay. So,
Michael Fremer, your turn.
Oh, it's his turn.
So
I thought I was summarizing him, but for Pete's sake, I have a feeling his summary will be different than mine, but go ahead.
Yeah, let him, and then it's your turn again, Geoff. Okay, is that okay with you?
Sure.
So here's the interesting thing. So I'm a writer, and Geoff is a writer. So if I get involved in this conversation, it's on two different levels. I'm talking about a writer, so I have to be careful because I don't want to be too critical of a writer, but I will be somewhat critical. You've written two stories on this subject. The first was about mobile fidelity, but it wasn't really about mobile fidelity. It was about a guy in Arizona. It became. That's fine. That's your take. The second story is supposed to be about recorded sound or the search for good sound, and it really was a story about a marginal player in our business who lives now in Atlanta, who lived in California and sells hot stampers, et cetera, et cetera. That was the lead of your story. And when I read that, I took a picture of myself. That was my reaction when I saw the story. Actually, that's not my reaction. That was when I was visiting the Munch Museum in Oslo this weekend. But that's another story. So here's the thing let's talk about Tom Port. Tom Port sells what are called hot stampers. There is no such thing as a hot stamper, but that's okay. It's a trademark. It's like there's no such thing as living stereo or living presence or whatever else. It's just a name. So what Tom does is he goes through thousands of records and he finds the best versions of pressings and sells the best ones for a premium price. And I think that's perfectly fine. And it's a legitimate business model because back in the day, there were millions of copies of records pressed. And as everyone knows, there are different sounds. Even the same stamper can produce different, depending on the time of day when it's pressed. We all know that records are like snowflakes. No two are alike. That would have been a good opening for your story. But instead, it opened with this guy who sells hot stampers. And this guy has been at it for decades, denigrating everybody in this business but him. That's my problem with Tom Port. So Tom Port says Chad Kassem has never pressed a good sounding record. First of all, the outrageousness of that disqualifies him from being considered taken seriously by anybody.
What did Chad say?
Let me finish. Let me finish now. I sat here like a good boy with my lollipop in my mouth, and I have to finish. So Tom Port says Chad Kassem has never pressed a good sounding record. Now, who is Chad Kassem's record producers? Who are making records for Chad? Let's talk about that for a minute. Bernie Grundman, Kevin Gray, Ryan Smith, George Marino, Willem Mackey, etc. The best veteran mastering engineers in the world, the most highly respected. Oh, and ERC doesn't make good records either. So these are the most highly respected mastering engineers in the world. It's not Chad's records. Chad has the final say. Chad presses the records and does the jackets and is the producer. But Tom Port is saying that none of those people make good sounding records. The stupidity of that is monumental. The guy is a toad, okay? He does come up with some good records, but to say that, to get on, and for you to publish that was so offensive to me, because that he shouldn't have gotten that much press, or you should have pointed out what I just said to you. You should have. Tom Port says this, but in fact, Chad's records are made by the top mastering engineers in the world. So what does he talk about? Now, I'm not done yet. So I'm at that point. That was so offensive. It's not offensive at you. It's what Tom Port said is offensive. Tom Port has spent years saying you need to buy original pressings, because back in the day, it was done with tube electronics, and the tube electronics have a certain sound to it. And you buy a reissue, it's going to sound solid, statey, and transistory. And so you don't want a classic records version of Tommy. You want the original British, which was cut using tube gear. Fair enough. Then ERC comes along, and this is a guy in England who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars restoring a Lyric Audiophile tube cutting system, which is Ne plus ultra of that genre, using Sean Davis, who I'm sure Tom Port's never heard of.
Is this almost over? For God's sakes, I got to feed my dog eventually.
Wait a second. You've already spoke. You spoke way
I hardly spoke. All I said was Tom Port, and then Chad went with the mail order bride thing, and then Michael 45 threw it to you. I have actually said almost nothing about this.
Wait a second. You got your chance to speak, and if we had a stopwatch, I'm almost done with this. But if I had a stopwatch, you'd find that I haven't said that much so far.
Okay, I feel like you've said a lot, but go.
You gave him a platform instead of taking a critical eye towards him, and that's not a journalist to me. That's just a promoter. But Tom Port did his thing. Tom Port left town, left it in the hands of other people. Fred. So Fred is now the expert. Who is Fred? I don't know. I don't know who Fred is. And you before that you published the story, you knew that Tom Port had left town and other people are running the business and deciding what a hot stamper is and what a good record is. We don't even know who those people are. And I'll end it with that. I think it was a totally irresponsible way to
I think you guys are a little weird about this guy moving to another town.
He's not running
it's like slow down. I'm just gonna I'm just trying to come up with 100 analogies here, but they're pretty good. I mean, if we do it in the business world, if somebody ran a bookstore and owned it still and then left because he was like retiring somewhere, would you say, oh, that bookstore is garbage? I would never go.
That's a terrible analogy. That's such a ridiculous analogy. I'll tell you why. If the bookstore owner was somebody who read every book and told people this is the best version of this book you will ever buy, and then he left town and somebody else started running it, and you wrote a story about the bookstore and didn't happen to mention that the guy who was recommending the books, that has a reputation over 30 years as recommending books, has left the building, that would be not right.
No, I don't have a dog in this race. I just got to state that right now. I don't have a dog in this race. You guys do. What I'm confused about is the other day, Michael 45, you went on and you were talking to that wonderful guy, Patrick, about records. And you said, you quoted that line. By the way, Chad, just to be clear, Chad in our article called, and whenever I have this kind of language, I have to go to my managing editor and get approval. He called Tom Port an effing loser. So let's just remember that was in print right there, right next to what Tom. Well, Michael Fremer, just a second. I want to finish. So Michael 45, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to ask you, Michael Fremer. I'm going to ask you this, Chad. Now, when I called Tom Port more than a year ago, not knowing who he was, and I said, hey, this sounds kind of crazy. He said, oh, really? Well, look, I listen to all these records. This is what I'm telling you. This is what I do. If someone doesn't like the record, they can get their money back. He said, let me send you a record. You can listen to it. So I said, Okay. And he said, what old record do you have that's in good shape that you like? I said, oh, Creedence Clearwater Revival. So he said,
Yeah, which Creedence Clearwater?
It's not yours, Chad. It's an old version of
No, what title?
It's Bayou Country.
Okay.
All right. So let me finish.
Wait in the mail and I'll send you on.
Okay. So he sent me the copy. I listened to it, compared it to mine. I said, wow, this sounds really, really good. And then I sent it back to him. And then I went and I listened to records with him. And I guess the thing that I'm wondering about is we're all here for the same thing. I don't know. But I think Michael 45 is certainly, you want to hear good records. You've gone through a lot over the last few months because of the mobile fidelity thing and trying to explore. I mean, you said it yourself a couple of years ago. I think you didn't really know records, and you're spending this time exploring. You referenced that Tom Port said this nasty thing about Chad, and I agree. I do not think Tom Port should say nasty things about everybody who makes new records. And I've told him that. I said, it ruins your argument. But Michael 45, you referenced that and you said, I don't even need to hear it. I don't even need anything to do with it. I don't understand. If you're really curious about sound, if you really want to see what these things sound like, why would you not want to hear if this guy has anything legitimate to say? Why would his abrasiveness and nastiness?
No one said otherwise, Geoff.
I answer it.
Shouldn't be part of the story.
Let's let Michael 45 answer.
Okay, wait a second. I mute your chat because you have a little echo. I unmute you when I'm done. Maybe I'm not a native speaker, so maybe I didn't put it into the right words. What I said was that a person, and it doesn't matter if it's vinyl, nail polish, or cars. If someone says something like, this guy has done nothing that is not terrible. He said it over Kevin Gray. This guy is dead to me, because it doesn't matter which branch. Someone who talks like this in my personal, it's a personal opinion, is not legit. And
dead? Wait, he's dead to you?
Yeah. If somebody talks like, imagine you make an interview.
Chad is like one of the best salesmen I've ever seen. You're telling me because Chad says something, he says hot poker, and because he might say something about another person's record, or he's holding up his record to sell it.
Chad never talks about another person to me.
Chad called Tom Port an effing loser to a reporter, a random person.
That's after Tom Port. That's after Tom Port attacks Chad relentlessly and says bad things about him, and doesn't have a perspective and the respect that Chad or anybody else trying to do good work deserves, whether you like the work or not. The man does not show respect to people. He's like an animal.
This sounds like the Paglia family or something. All you guys are in this universe trying to sell something, a message, a record, an idea, right?
How about respect and treating people nicely? How about that as the message? You can.
I never told Tom Port to disrespect people, but Chad, I have great respect for you, and I've talked to you. I talked to you maybe 2 or 3 times. You tell me if I'm wrong. I must have talked to you 25 times or 30 times in the last 6 months over this story. And I just found it odd with something that you're so passionate about, that the fact that Tom Port was there made you just stop reading, because our readers, we had like 400,000 people who read that story. And many of those people were completely new, and they were learning about records. They were learning about your Beach Boys record and how much it kicked butt of the Capitol record. They were learning about
Geoff,
Michael.
Please be so kind, Mike. Be so kind and hear me out so that you get my problem. Imagine for whatever reason you do an interview with me, and during that interview I would say, you know what, the Washington Post hasn't done one article since 1973 that was not boring and terrible. Would you print that without a statement?
Well, I guess we've had plenty of those in our comments section. I guess that's
something different. I'm talking.
Back to comments, right?
I'm talking about an article in your.
Well, I'm trying to think of a good comparison. I mean, if the Columbia Journalism Review or the New York Times or somebody was covering the Washington Post and said something negative about us, it's just they
That's
have
not
the
what
free
I
right.
said.
That
Sorry,
wasn't
that's
the
sorry,
you
but
change the subject
I
every
have to be
time.
picky now, but that's not what I said. Because you wrote it in your article. Would you write it in your article if I would have said the thing I just said, that the Washington Post is boring and terrible since 1973 and hasn't done one good article?
I'd keep reading, Michael. I would keep reading I wouldn't take it so personally that I would be like this.
So you would print it?
Chad, you sent me a note. You said I thought I felt like I was educating you, and I feel like I wasted my time. In some ways I should not care, but I care. I mean, like I have respect for people, and I was like, really? Like, what about T-Bone Burnett? What about what Neil Young has to say about digital? What about all this other stuff? Tom Port is I just want to explain really quickly. I'm sorry. Tom Port is a very good entryway into the story, and Michael Fremer is a very good exit.
Tom Port was not a good entryway into the story. Tom Port.
So, I'm going to tell you why. I know you're better at writing than I am, but I just want to tell you why.
I didn't say that.
The reason he's a good entryway is because first of all, he gets at a lot of the many issues. If you took him out of the fact that he's abrasive, he gets at the many issues that were going to be floated in that article. The idea that different pressings sound different, the idea that there's a crazy market that's going on right now that people don't understand, and then the idea that there is a real debate between digital and analog. So Tom really gets at that. And once I got him out of my lead, and Michael, you quoted a line from in the story. You said, records are like snowflakes. That's in the Tom Port section. It's just we tell stories through people and scenes and things that are going on.
Starting a story with Tom Port is a peripheral player in this business. Tom Port is like a side show in the business. And Tom Port should be in the story, no doubt. But to make it to lead with Tom Port, with pictures of Tom Port, and Tom Port does this, and Tom Port is a peripheral player in this business, and he should be in the story, but it's a matter of perspective and emphasis. And to me, the accent was on the wrong syllable in that story. To start with Tom Port was like, what? He's not a responsible.
Who is determining?
Let me just say one. Could I say one more thing? Because I don't say too much. He sells some very good records that I've heard of. I have friends who buy his records. I've heard some very good ones. I've heard some terrible ones too. But that's a matter of opinion. He sells a twofer of John Coltrane, Lush Life. It's a Rudy Van Gelder master from the early 70s. I don't care how hot the stamper is. There's not a good copy of that record, not a one, because that record is seriously compressed. Every pressing of it, seriously compressed. It sounds terrible. He sells it for hundreds of dollars. And then he says Chad's version, cut from the master tape, and the ERC version, cut from the master tape, is no good. That's a guy trying to sell records. That's a charlatan, in my opinion.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I want to apologize to Vinyl Tube Man. I did not mean to offend you. I was just using you as an example of the comment section because I wanted Michael Fremer to be able to talk. Second of all, I want to apologize. Sometimes I yell, and it's not because I mean to. It's because on the internet, I can never tell that I'm yelling. I'm sorry.
No. Let me. I like it. We have a heated conversation.
No, I don't mean to yell.
We respect each other. And that's the main thing.
Let's go back. I just want to go back to personality conflicts, and I want to go back to personality conflicts in the article. So, Michael Fremer, let's just talk about this, because let's talk about, you guys are very offended and like, how could you call someone that? Whatever, Michael. After my last Washington Post article, you called me a liar on the article. Let me say it, and then you can totally talk. You called me a liar on the internets, and you made an actual YouTube video about how terrible my article was and how it was clickbait. Okay. My response to that, as you know from our text message exchanges, was to over and over say, let's work this out. Let's try to talk. I want to hear what you have to share here. I've not gone over your house. And then you invited me over. We had a wonderful day listening to records.
When did I invite you over? When did I invite you over? 2 years ago. You never came. You went to Tom Port's instead of me.
Michael Fremer, I do my research when I do articles. Every single article, if there were a kind of article about audiophiles, there are books. Every article, the New York Times article about Electric Recording Company, the book on searching for the perfect sound, all these articles always end up in Michael Fremer's basement. And they always are listening. I didn't want to be another guy in your basement. I wanted to have a conversation with you over and over. And then eventually I was so pleased that you invited me over and we had a wonderful time, right? So you called me a liar and you made a YouTube video. I was fine with that. I don't understand Michael 45 and Chad and Mike. Does Tom Port, have you ever bought a record from him? A hot poker, as we call it. Have you ever bought a record?
I have not. I've heard some of them, and some of them are very good. When he sells a copy of the Bob Ludwig Led Zeppelin 2, it's going to sound unbelievably great. He sells a lot of good records. I like the fact that he goes through 1,000 records and finds the best ones and sells them for more money. That is a perfectly legitimate business model because, as you say, no two records are alike. They're like snowflakes. However, you cannot sell a good copy of Elton John's second album on Uni Records. I don't care how hot the stamper was. Every pressing of that record, the bass was cut off at 80 hertz. He sells a lot of.
Then you return it. You return it. You're done. You just return the record. You're done. Chad, have you ever? Chad, you have some. I mean, on your site, you're selling mobile fidelity one steps. There's some of them for $300, $400, $500. That's what the market is for.
They used to be going for that. They've been going down. Have
you ever bought a hot poker?
Have I ever bought one from Tom Port? No, but it's a good question. It's a good thing you asked that question because while this was going on, I was in LA meeting with the labels, and then I was going to another place in California to look at one of the rarest multi-million-dollar collections that I've ever seen. But while I was there, I went to Audio Salon, which is one of the highest end record audio stores in LA, and we were listening to the Air Force Zero with the the big Wilsons. And I mean, we're reading this story, and as we're reading it, the owner of the place, Meyer, pulls out some hot pokers, and he hands them to me like this is like while this is going on. I'm like, dude, I can't believe you have these. He goes, well, one of my customers have been buying them, but he gives them to me when he doesn't like them. He just gives them to me. This guy's got wealthy customers who can probably buy these records and is not going to lose sleep when he makes a mistake, but he gives them to this other guy. So I'm looking at the notes, and he's got like this A++, A+++, and then some sides are different. Like, so the one side is a white hot stamper, and the other side, the other side is just okay. So he pulls out Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. Now, I love Springsteen. I don't want to offend anybody that loves that album. I'm sorry. But that, to me, is a shitty sounding record.
No matter what pressing it is.
Huh?
No matter what pressing it is, it's not a good record. It's just
right. So I would never recommend that record to start with, okay, to anybody. So he pulls out Born to Run. So it's dated sounding, it's digital recording. I don't like the music. The last two songs on the album are good and classic, and they don't sound dated. The last two songs, which are in the worst spot. Dude, the record, so he plays that record, and we're like, take it off. The next hot stamp he pulls out is Stevie Winwood, Back in the High Life. I think it was that one.
Yes.
And the song is good. It's another digital recording that sounds digital, that has that dated produced. Both records, I just couldn't believe that I wouldn't, in the wildest dream, recommended that to a customer. So that's the first two hot stampers. The third one, just hear me out. The third one, I almost cracked up when I saw him pulling it out. I was like, oh man, come on, really? Now, before I'll finish the story, he pulls out Christopher Cross. And so, I mean, look, I'm about to lose it. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to hear that yacht rock and all that. In my mind, I'm saying that. But dude, I was surprised that Christopher Cross, because I hadn't listened to it in 30 years. I was tired of it. It actually, I was very impressed. It sounded good, and I enjoyed listening to it because it'd been so long. But I had an opinion already until he played. I was like, wow, I'm glad you played that. It's a lot better than I remembered. And But the first two, I just couldn't believe it, man. But what was crazy is your article had just came out and this was all going on and we were kind of talking about it. And the next thing you know, I'm sitting in the Cat Daddy sweet spot chair and he's handing me these hot stampers with his notes. And I just couldn't believe it. But I really couldn't believe how bad the two records were. The third one was good.
Allow me for 1 second to go on the principle of this hot stamper idea. And Chad, Michael, or Geoff, correct me if I'm wrong. But what I think what Tom Port does is a good service because he play grades records. You know, when you have a 40, 30, 50-year-old record, the most important thing, what makes, in my opinion, the biggest difference is how was it stored for the last decades. And that really makes differences. So you have 10, 20, 30 Sgt. Peppers and all sound different due to the fact that they have been stored for decades. The better they got stored, the better they sound. And that's what he does. He listens to those records and says, this sounds fine, this doesn't sound that fine. Can you go with that, or do I left something out, or am I completely wrong?
Michael, I appreciate that that's a factor, but I guess I don't really have any. I don't think how it's stored is the most important thing. I think how it sounds is the most important thing. And I guess my thing is, I think storage is important and cleaning is important. But you know, my biggest problem with everybody spending all this time on Tom Port, when I say everybody, you guys, I got to tell you, I got maybe like 7 emails from people about Tom Port. Most of my emails were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that records are sound like this. Well, I don't know what to do. I have this Crosley turntable. I want to get into it. And I go, oh, well, I listened to this U-turn turntable. It's pretty cool. I mean, this is stuff that Michael Fremer has been doing for 40 years. Oh, well, you should try that because that's a really good turntable. It's not expensive. Where do I get? So I just want to make it clear that the 2 guys on here and then the other guy, Jonathan Weiss with the giant speakers, that man won't even talk to me anymore. You guys have been the most passionate about hating that story for Tom Port. I just want to, and I understand why he attacked me, and I understand that. But I guess what I'd say is the most important thing to me is listening and hearing what I hear. And maybe my ears suck. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But when I listened to Tom Port's the records that he was selling, I thought these sound quite good. I bought a Beach Boys record off him because I didn't want to say, I just went on the site and bought it. I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm a reporter. Send me a hot stamper.
What record was it that you bought?
I bought Surfing USA.
An original Capitol pressing?
No, it wasn't. That's what I also found very interesting about it, because, like, for example, it was from the 70s, and I don't know, like, I didn't memorize the stamper numbers or whatever.
Why not?
Why? Because that's not my job, man. It's your job.
Let me say something. I think I might have made. If I said Born to Run, I meant Born in the USA. They both. Born in the USA is the record that they played that I thought sounded horrible. But Born to Run, even though that's a classic, great record, it's not
so good either.
Great sound, but at least it's analog and it's smooth and it's a great record. If I said Born to Run, I meant Born in the USA. And another thing is explain about Tom. Geoff, tell us, because we haven't been, and me and Fremer, I don't think us 3 have been invited to Tom Port's hi-fi room. Can you explain his stereo and maybe compare it to maybe Fremer's stereo? Like, what kind of stereo did Tom Port playing these records on, and how was the wiring?
What stereo does he make these sweeping pronouncements that I don't even make? I will say, here's what it sounds like.
Okay, well, so he asked me a question. This is what I'm going to say to you. I am not going to get into equipment competition, and I'll tell you why.
Not competition.
Well, no, I
just asked you a question. What stereo does he have? That people can take away what they want from it, you know? I mean, I happen to be using the Doug Sachs. Oh, Michael, you mentioned all the great mastering engineers we use.
I left out Doug.
You forgot Doug. And and Doug needed to be mentioned along with the other
Yes.
greats. But I listened to Doug Sachs' ATC speakers that was in Doug's mastering lab with Chris Muth's mastering console, and I can switch in between hot stampers and our reissues. So did he have 2 turntables set up there? And what kind of system did he have? Just answer the question.
I'll just tell you as best I can as a complete amateur I am not an equipment expert. I have not, but he has a VPI turntable that he set up his own way. He has a Dynavector cartridge. He uses a solid state receiver that is very pedestrian,
What's the brand name? Just curious.
Can't say.
Probably a 70s era. It's probably a 70s era.
Yes,
It's fine.
But I think it's Michael. You'll correct me on these things. I think it's an ear 324 amp. Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's a nice phono preamp. That's fine.
And he has giant speakers. I can't tell you what they are because I don't have them written down. But
I know what they're legacy speakers.
Okay, so but I want to get at something because I find it very interesting, and I find it really and hopefully for these folks. Josh D, I was not, by the way, I know I'm not an expert, but by the way, I was not looking at my phone. I was looking at notes, sadly enough. But more importantly, when we talk about different sound and different sounding records, so I basically had 3 different listening experiences. I had Tom Port in his place. Then I had Jonathan Weiss, who has those giant horn speakers, and he has the K3 turntable, the same one that Michael has. And I went to his cavernous room in Dumbo. Then I had Michael's room, which is a very cramped space that he says, this is a workspace. You're right there in the face of those Wilson speakers. So what I find really interesting, I like you, Vinyl Tube. What I find very interesting is that I took different records to different places and they sounded very different to me. So for example, to move off Tom Port for just a second, we can go back to him.
No, we probably ought to move off of Tom.
Let's forget about Tom Port.
Let's really, man, we need to move off Tom, but go ahead. And it's interesting that different speakers, different systems, different sound. Okay,
so
go ahead.
The one thing I'd say about Tom Port, and I'll just be done with it after this, is that story was, I wish people, well, I know people read it, but the people would read it and they would see it's just about Tom Port at the top. And there's like 4,500 words, more words than you ever see in a story about everything. But more importantly, I think that the bottom line is I don't understand why you wouldn't just spend $119. I mean, we've all spent more than that on a record. I think I have. I did like a couple days ago, and buy a copy of one of Tom Port's records and listen to it. And look, if you don't like the thing, just send the damn thing back. And if you do like it, suddenly you're like, oh my God, I've gotten into something that I didn't really understand, and this is adding to my universe.
But the consumer can go to the used record store and find that record. You know what I mean? If he's selling,
I don't agree with you, Chad. I don't agree. I can find Carole King's Tapestry at my local record store for $15. The original pressing on Ode. I can find that. Okay, but Tom Port is actually, his people and he have sat over years and listened to way more Tapestries than I ever want to. And they will tell you.
Okay. All right. Here's a good point I'm going to make. I think it's a good point. Somebody that says our record, we've never made a good record, is the person that you're going to trust his ear and opinion.
That's right. That's
Is that a good point, Mike?
Look, again, you trust your own ears. Don't trust his ears.
No, I know, trust your own ears.
Yeah,
I trust.
Buys a record and gets it home. They don't like it. They're not going to have to go back to the post office and send it back.
Why? I do that. I just bought a record.
Is this the record that you bought from Tom?
I just bought. No, Chad, you're not going to, on a live stream. I've purchased from Chad Kassem. Here are 2 of them. I got this.
I asked you this.
Wait, we'll compete. We'll hold up your records. I bought this one from you, right? And then I bought this one from you too. So listen, here's the thing. I don't understand why you guys, very strong-willed, very self-confident, very successful guys, are allowing a guy's like mean words to make you completely ignore something in your universe. And I don't get that, but we'll move on. Let's move on.
Well, but I sell original pressings all day long. I've got 30,000 records that are coming next week of nothing but original records. I have nothing. Listen, I have nothing against Tom recommending original.
Right.
And Michael Ludwig knows, and so does Michael Fremer. And you, originals can be great.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with originals. But asking $400 for, Yes, Fragile, that to me is, but listen, people can go and buy his records. I don't care. I really don't care. My only problem with the whole thing is I'm glad you wrote the article. We love recognition or introducing people. We love that. I just don't think he should have been. There's two things about the two articles you wrote. I don't like the way you ended the first article. We don't want to talk about the first one, please, but I don't like the way that last guy that comment, and I don't like the way you began the second article. If Tom Port would have been not a focus, I don't want to scare away people. Anyway, that's all. Let's find something we can all agree on and talk about the next topic.
Well, and I, get scared. I don't think anyone was scared, but electric recording company. Let's go into that for a second, because I think that's really interesting when you ask me about stereo systems. So I want to love electric recording company records. They're everything that I would dream of as a human. They look beautiful. They're packaged beautifully. They're like, they show me the picture of the tape. I just am so excited for them. So I brought electric recording company records to, and one thing that I found really interesting about this, and I'd like to hear Michael Fremer's view on it, is because you're a very big supporter of electric recording company and their records.
I'm not a supporter of anybody. I don't write about those records because they're unobtainable. I'm supportive of people who try to do good work, and they get denigrated by people who have ulterior motives. That's the difference.
Okay. Let me just finish. So I go to Tom Port's, and I brought a copy of Quiet Kenny, that was an electric recording company one. I believe I brought a Quiet. I'd have to look at the article again, but I believe I brought Analog Productions, and I think I brought one that Tom Grover Bieri is doing as in this new attempt to put out public domain recordings in Europe. So I brought those, and I just taken my ears for it. I mean, the electric recording company one didn't sound as good. Just didn't sound as good. And I was like, huh. And then I went to see Jonathan Weiss with his system, totally different system, giant horn speakers, and I played the electric recording company's Brilliant Corner. I love that record, that Monk record. And then we played an OJC version. And again, just blew it away, the OJC version. It was clear to me that it was a better sounding record. It was not even close, not even close. And then I go to Michael Fremer's house, and he has a different system. And when I listened to Michael Fremer's system with Brilliant Corners, I wouldn't say that I think it beat the OJC, but it was the best time I ever heard an electric recording company record. I could understand what he was talking about, and it was the first time that I heard it, and I thought, I understand this a little bit. So, Chad, maybe that's what you're getting at. There are different systems that play different things in different ways, and maybe that's part of this whole thing.
That's true.
Once a long time ago, I went to Mr. Port's apartment, and the system he had at the time was Fulton speakers, and they were missing the drivers. Like the wires were dangling out where like the mid-range should be. And he had the Audio Research's first amp, solid state amp. You know what I mean? And then he had like a cheap turntable with a strain gauge. And and that's what he was grading things on. And so later on, another record dealer, I'll just say his first name is John, a good friend of ours, had a picture of Port. This is when Port when Fremer was writing for the Absolute Sound, you see, Geoff, what you don't understand, the reason why me and Fremer, Michael might not understand, and you might not understand, this has been going on for 30 years. This has been going on for 30 years. So if we're a little bit passionate and talking way too much about a nobody, it's because we've been hearing it for 30 years. But okay, so this John I know, a really great record dealer, had a picture of Tom's system with those holes in it. And it's at the time, back in the old days, Fremer write a story on Our Way Out West that Doug did with Tube Electronics with John Koenig, the owner's son, Lester Koenig, supervising it. Fremer gave The Way Out West a good review. Port said that it stunk, of course. He always, anything we did stinks. And then you have to wait months before you saw the letter in the Absolute Sound. That's how you had to wait for things. So Fremer and Port were going back and forth. Well, I'm staying at this dealer's house, and he shows me this picture of Port's system, and I'm like, dude, I'm taking that picture. I took the picture and I put it in a book and I put it in my briefcase. I just took it from him, I put it in my briefcase in a book. And this is overseas. So when I left his house, I opened my briefcase and I looked in the book, and he took the picture back because he knew I was going to send it to Fremer. I wanted that freaking thing posted in the Absolute Sound. I
wouldn't have done that. And I don't
Yeah,
care.
but people need to know, man. You're going to criticize.
You can state your opinion of how a record sounds on your own system, and that's fine. And the ERCs, it's all tube electronics. It's going to have a softer sound. It's the bottom end's not going to be as tight as with a solid state. Every mastering suite in the world is like a hi-fi system in reverse. It has its own sound. If you like Kevin's mastering suite when he was at RTI Records didn't sound as good as the one he's got now. So some of the older records that Chad released don't sound as good as the ones that Kevin's cutting for the same titles now. That's just the way it is. So you can make a pronouncement about what you hear on your system, but this guy speaks from on high and just goes over the top. So I think he belonged in the story, but you led with him and made him and pictures of him as if he's some special thing. He never talks about what his
gentlemen. I think we gave Tom Port enough room for one evening. I hope you agree. But
I agree. Let's
and I think in a way, let's move on with the discussion. Okay. And I think this now is also, I mean, we have almost 700 people watching us. This is also a good time where I start to collect some questions you have. And maybe people a little more involved.
Get this thing over, Mike, man. You the man, baby.
And maybe we start, it's again hot stampers, but maybe this is an interesting question. Not everybody knows. Are the hot stampers the same matrix when comparing?
That's part of the problem. He doesn't reveal any of that stuff. He doesn't talk about his process. He doesn't explain, for example, you can
I can explain this stuff if you want.
I finish.
Sure.
The question was, so he could send you a hot stamper of the second Buffalo Springfield album on Atlantic and on Atco, and the label could be the original brown tan label, but one record could be mastered at Columbia Records, did a terrible job with it, and one could be the original mastered at Atlantic Records, which sounds fantastic. But instead of saying, this is the one you want the one that was mastered at Atlantic, he'll say, this is the hot stamper one. His process, he doesn't describe what he does, how he does it, how careful he is, whether he matches levels. He doesn't talk about any of it.
I can explain a little, Michael. I mean, I can explain a little of that, I guess, because I don't think it's a big secret. I think what he's done over the years is, from listening to records and listening to certain records, he has certain ballparks of records that he believes are going to be the best versions of those records. So say, let's just throw out the idea that I'm making this up. Don't buy anything based on this. But say that someone decides that a German version of Pink Floyd from the early 80s is on Polydor. I don't even know if that exists, is the #1 version of that record. So what Tom Port will do is he'll acquire as many copies of that version that he can. He's already ruled out other ones that are outside that area from listening over years. And he'll listen to those, and that's what he'll rate. And he'll decide this one is the best sounding of this area, and I'm going to sell this. And then the other ones will not be sold as whatever, hot stampers. So I think that's roughly how he does his thing.
Does he say, well, this is a better mastering, it was mastered over here and mastered over there? Or does he just say, this is my AA plus, you know, it becomes a lot of mythology and gobbledygook.
Well, Michael Fremer, have you heard it? You guys used to actually get along a little bit. Dad, you were in his damn apartment. Michael Fremer, I'm very curious. Do you think the records that he's selling beyond the John Coltrane specifically, are they bad?
We agreed, gentlemen, we agreed to move on from.
Yes, let's move on.
No one ever 45. It's really about sound we're talking about. And we've talked a lot about personalities. I don't care about personalities. What about sound? Do you like those records, Michael Fremer?
Some of them are good. Like anybody who buys an original Led Zeppelin Robert Ludwig II gets the best sounding version. They're all going to be pretty good, and that's great. It's not because it's a hot stamper; it's because of what happened with the mastering. But that's fine. No one is against what he's doing. It's what he says about other people. It's how he denigrates other people. He's not a good player in this business because of how he operates. That's all I'm saying. Let's move on.
Michael, Geoff, please. Okay, wait, chat.
Buy records from Tom Port. Right. We don't really care. Buy who you want to buy from, support who you want to support.
Right. That's right. That's the final line.
I think this is Patrick, the vinyl archivist, a guy who's really into originals and a walking encyclopedia. And I think we all can agree that best sounding pressings does exist.
Yes.
No doubt about that. Yeah.
In many cases, that's true. In other cases, it's the ERC as one sound and the OJC is another sound, which is best. I wouldn't go there. I would rather describe what the sound is. I said, yeah, the ERCs are all tube cutting. It's going to be a softer sound. It's going to be a warmer sound. It's not going to have the snap and the transient snap of the solid state system. That's a description of two different sounds, not a denigration of one over the other. And that's the difference between someone who's a legitimate player in this and someone who is just really throwing stones. That's all I'll say about that.
University of Vinyl, please put the question up again. I overlooked it. If you write it again, I will put it on screen. Sorry. Okay.
However, the George Harrison box was terrible. The reissue of the All Things Must Pass, that was a disaster for me, under any circumstances.
Well, I mean, let's think of something interesting to talk about. I mean, I mean, Geoff, we love you bringing the attention to our lives, man, and sharing it with others. You know, it's a lot of fun to be had for all. It's a fun hobby. It's a safe hobby. It's a soul-soothing hobby.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good thing. And I mean, it you know, my little girl, my daughter is getting into vinyl, and it ain't because.
Does she have a choice, Chad?
No, I mean, seriously, you know that if you're 16 years old, you're not doing what your dad wants you to do.
Yeah, can I tell a short story? So I'm a friend with Harold Bronson, who founded Rhino Records, and I went to visit him one day, and we're walking through his corridor of his upstairs room where he's got his listening room and his records and pictures of every celebrity you've ever seen with him and autographed and you know, just it's a dream to see what he's got there. And we go past his kid's room, and his kid must have been 13 or 14. He was in there playing video games. I said, "What kind of music do you like?" He goes, "Music sucks." You know? It wasn't just he didn't like certain records. Music sucks. But I knew in a couple of years he'd come around. But you know, it's just funny.
What guys? And I'd like to hear your view of this, because what I find very interesting about this, and we're talking on two different levels. One level is how you guys felt. I know, Chad, you called me. I think maybe Jonathan Weiss called me and said, like, I'm talking to all of my my pro audio friends or the people in the community, and they're angry about your story. They're unhappy about your story. So this is what I'm curious about. at a certain point, you guys were the only people out there, and nobody else was fighting for this. And I understand there was a certain kind of like, we're in battle almost, and we need to really attack and sell and go after and be loud and aggressive about it. And now things are different. There are a lot of people out there making great records. I mean, I have a whole, I love this. I love these. Sorry. I love these records. Sorry, I just dropped my notebook. These guys at Vinyl Me Please. I don't know if anyone's heard this.
I love it. No, I have it. It's
I love
great.
it. And I talked to these guys like Shane over at Intervention Records. I know, Michael, you've talked to many times before. And the guy Cam from Vinyl Me Please. These guys are not arguing with each other. They're not upset about anything. They don't take anything personal. It seems like they're like, hey, this is kind of a new thing. And what I'm wondering is, when you tell me like Tom Port, why is he in the story? Why should he?
No one said that. You keep doing that. Nobody said, why is he in the story? We're saying, why?
You can go forever. You can go forever after I finish the question.
You are dishonest. You're dishonest, man. You keep doing that. No one says, why is Tom Port in the story? None of us have said that, and none of us would say that.
Let me just, someone's phone is ringing.
You're saying, why is he the lead in the story? Why is he this important figure in this story?
Well, I chose to make because I chose to make him the lead. It's whatever. That's what I chose. So, what I'd like to ask about that, though, is at a certain point, it feels like we're in a club here. And if you're not part of the club, you can't sort of belong. Michael, you and Chad have decades of time that you've worked together.
I don't agree with that, man. We're not in a club. Anybody can be. We're not in a club. VMP makes great records. When they started, they were cutting from digital sources, and many of us were critical. And guess what? They went back and they started cutting from tape, and they're making great sounding records. And even when they were cutting from digital, this is a bad. No one even did that. Nobody does that. You know, Wax Time. Yeah, Wax Time is they take a CD and they make a record. It's not copyright. But nobody does what you're saying. That's what
it's like. Why is, I guess what I'm wondering is, why is this so personal? Like, if I end the other article with the guy who's saying that digital is just as good as analog, why is that personal? Why isn't that that's an opinion that someone has?
I didn't make it personal about me. I think we're all saying you wrote a story about records and ended up by saying that digital's better. Who had the last word in the story? Why? That's all.
Well, you had the last word in the second story, right?
I didn't. That's a different subject. I don't care. I didn't.
Listen, man, let's talk about something positive. You know, I mean, I try to say it. Do we appreciate you writing about our world? Yes. We love it.
Chad, can I ask you a question? Because I'm very interested in this. So I, as a consumer, so for example, like Quiet Kenny, I think that you could correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe there's another record like this, but you might have been involved in putting out a Quiet Kenny in 2003, right? And then maybe you put out another one in 2015, or I purchased the UHQR of Miles Davis 33 when it came out, and then a year and a half later or something like that, you have the 45. What happens? You're working with Kevin Gray most of the time. Tell me what happens between 2003, 2008, 2015, 2020. What is it that makes you go back into the mastering room and make a new version of that record?
There's all kinds of things. I mean, in 2002, 2003, we did 25, 45 RPM. We call it the Top Fantasy 25 Top Jazz Albums. And at that time, Fantasy owned Fantasy, Contemporary, Pablo, Riverside, and Prestige. They own those companies. I worked really good. I licensed the whole Creedence Clearwater. That's what I was trying to ask you, if you got our Bayou Country. Because if you hadn't heard Kevin Gray's cut, maybe you ought to. Michael, did you hear the Kevin Gray's cut?
Yes.
Me? Yeah.
Both okay? Michaels did probably.
Both Michaels did, yeah. And I've got original too.
You want me to try to get you a hot poker? Just in case.
See, here we go again. You can't, you guys, you're making me I spent so much time with Michael Fremer. We have this beautiful photo of him. We have this huge section of him. and you're making me like the Tom Port representative because the three of you feel one specific way. I just think we should be.
You want me to finish your question? I'll finish your question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got.
Don't say hot poker.
You were talking about fantasy. I licensed that from Fantasy. I worked really great with Fantasy. Ralph Kaffel was the president, and he mentored me, and I owe Ralph a lot, and I started working with him in 1992, all right? You also mentioned a lot of new players that just got started. I've been doing this since 92. It wasn't easy, okay? So I licensed 25 titles, $50 retail. We're going to make 1,000 numbered editions, 1,000 numbered of 25 of what I picked, I personally, with the help of my friends, Fremer, people that I entrust. Hey, what's the best? We come out with Way Out West, Waltz for Debbie, Miles Davis Cooking, okay, the natural, characters or the suspects, usual suspects. Okay, the thing was a smash hit. People could subscribe to their own number. For the first 250 people, if you were number 2, you got serial number 2. We got 2 a month for a year. Well, when that came out and that sold out, what does my customers ask me? Do another one.
Do it again.
Do another one. Okay, we're doing the top 50. I did another one. It sells out. The top 75, the top 100. So we do 100 different fantasy at 45, 1,000 each. The first 250 serial numbers go to the same person who subscribed. If you were number 2 in the first series, we gave you the first chance to be number 2 in the second, the third, and the fourth. All of those sold out. They did well. Well, people, hey, we want 33s. Okay, let's do a prestige series. We'll do a mono prestige series. We're going to get the original master tapes. We're going to send them to Kevin Gray. We're going to have QRP plate them and QRP press them, and we're going to do it a flat edge, flat profile, deep groove, Stoughton jackets. We're going to number edition the first 1,000 and the first 250 go to people that subscribe. Then those sell out. They're doing well. Okay, let's do 25 prestige stereo. Okay, those sell out. They do well. Then there was a time for 7 years that the label didn't want to license stuff to me. It was a new company bought it, and they wanted to do some of their own records. Hey, they own it. They can do it. We had them for years. A lot of people bought them. A lot of people waited and yawned and waited. Oh, I'll get them later. Later never came. They start going for $200, $300 a piece on eBay and the other places. The company sees the success we have with the Verve series. They approach me. Hey, Chad, good old buddy, you remember us? We want to work with you again. I said, okay, you want me to do the same thing we're doing with the Verve for the contemporary series, since I'm great friends with John Koenig and we work with Bernie. And yeah, that's exactly what we want. We want you to pick the titles. We want you to make these records just as if they were an analog production. And I go, okay, if you want us to do the same thing we do with Verve, then I get to do any title from that on 45. I get to do, and we're back, and I get to repress the Bill Evans box. I get to repress all the things that are in the middle of pressing. And that's how it works. So I mean,
I just drop in here for a second. So you should know something about what Chad does and what he's done. So at one point, Verve decided to do their own thing with releasing vinyl. So they started a catalog of vinyl releases that Chad didn't do, that somebody else oversaw. And it was a total flop because it wasn't done the right way, and it flopped. And then Chad came along and took the same Verve catalog and made it a big success. So that's what he does. When they took away contemporary stuff from him, they decided to do Way Out West. They put a Way Out West box out, but whoever did it didn't know that Roy Dunan, the engineer, boosted the top end when he recorded it, and then it had to be cut when you cut the lacquer because it was like a primitive Dolby thing. And that record came out, and it was terrible because it wasn't done right. He knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing. And then if you get it and you don't like it because you like an original better or whatever, you can say that. But what's been said about him, it's just not acceptable.
Chad, can I ask you a question? Your story is an incredible story. We all know it. I think we all know it. It's an incredible story. When you read that article, were your feelings like, I don't see you as a guy who spends a lot of time breaking down because your feelings are hurt, which there's nothing wrong with that. Were your feelings hurt? Did you take it so personally that it was like hard for you to go into work that day? How did you feel when a guy who you don't respect and you have battled with and really don't like said something nasty about your records?
Yeah, I mean, wow, that would upset me that much that I wouldn't come into work the next day.
Well,
no,
Chad, you said you stopped. I mean, you stopped talking with me. You said, you sort of took
dude,
your records and went home, and other people. I mean, not even as bad as Jonathan Weiss, who I called, who I thought was. I wrote in that story that I got chills listening to a Louis Armstrong record. I told that to Chuck D in my article, and he was furious. So that's why I'm asking, because it seemed like you retreated after that, after being such a wonderful resource.
well, first of all, when that article came out, I was on the road in LA meeting with all the major labels about all the wonderful stuff that's to be coming out in the next couple of years. I was doing some productive stuff. Then I went from there to look at like a collection of the most rare albums, the best collection I've ever seen in my life. Then I went from there to Toronto to buy 30,000 records. So I was busy. I wasn't really worrying about too much of anything that was going on other than what I was doing. Then when I got to Canada, I had to figure out, I had to change my phone so I could get texts, but I couldn't send them out. And I told you that. So
you were busy.
Huh?
You were busy.
Not only was I busy, I couldn't send out texts once I got to Canada. I wasn't responding to you because I was busy, but I was upset with the reason that I was upset with you is I spent hours talking to you. I got you in touch with Craig Kalman, the CEO of Atlantic. I gave you Bernie Grundman's number. Everybody I could think of, Don McInnes at the end of the story. These are people, difference makers. These are the real people that make a difference, that produce something in the world. Okay, they're producing things. They're bringing enjoyment to our lives. They're producing a new product they're not just taking somebody's old product and selling it. They're making a difference in our world. Craig Kalman, Don McInnes, all the people, and I spent hours and hours with you trying to educate you into what I knew so that you knew everything that I knew. I fully gave my all and my heart and soul into explaining and trying to educate you everything I know, nothing. And so I assumed the article, I know they say about assuming. I assumed the article was going to be about introducing people into records, like new people. Hey, this is going on. It's happening. It's cool. Here's some new records that everybody's going crazy. That's what I assumed it was. But when I read it, it surprised me. And yeah, it did bother me a bit. And it's like Fremer said, Port is one of the players. He's one of many players in the world. He's got his gimmick. Okay. Everybody's got their angle. Port's definitely got a gimmick, and it's definitely a unique one, and it's a very hot topic. Just like his hot stamp is a hot topic, people love to talk about it. And so he's welcome to live in this world too, and he's
Chad,
welcome to
I went and I sat down with Bernie Grundman and I sat in his studio and I talked with him about what he does, and we wrote about that. I don't think you got to that because I don't think you read that.
So I just like Fremer, we think that he could have been part of the story, not a focus of a story, and that's what upset me. That's it.
Yeah, that's what upset me too. Just the perspective was it's just like, you know, in your first story, you claimed that the MoFi thing never would have come out without the individual who I will not mention. It would have come out. It would have all come out. I don't understand your perspective, and as a writer, I don't understand. That's what I don't understand.
Michael, how would that have come out? I'm sorry.
No, man, let's not. Geoff, when I answered your question about how I decided to do records, we don't want to get into the other article. What did you asked me a question about how I decided to do records?
Yeah.
Did I answer it?
You did, yeah.
I have a question for Geoff Edgers.
Here's a question. Michael does not have this record. Do you, Michael? You don't have this music to make automobiles by, do you? No.
You know, someone, Michael 45, did you have a question, or I saw a question that was good on the side I would ask.
But are you planning any more audio articles?
I don't know. I mean, like I cover, that's not what I cover really. But I do, it's an interesting universe. I mean, I wasn't really planning on writing the Mobile Fidelity article, except that I saw the news on it and decided to write that. And I have a couple others that I think came up, and interesting people that you could write about. So maybe, you know, I mean, I've got a lot of other stuff to do, you know. But I mean, I plan on listening to records and trying to learn about how to listen, and I mean, I love music, so I guess that'll be something I do forever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that was this.
Damn, I told myself to mellow out and not talk much, and I guess I just couldn't do it.
You were fine. You were fine. Chad, you were fine. We all have our perspective on this. Geoff has his perspective on it.
So far, at least so far, it was a different stream. Different than.
Well, I don't really have a.
But I don't mind.
Just to make it clear, I don't really have a. I'm an outsider to this universe. I don't really have a perspective other than to try to talk to the people who are making things and consuming them. And I mean, it's like this woman Brittany who's in the article. I don't think I've ever heard anything from you guys about just regular people who are doing this. And I know that it's about expanding it. And you know, I think we spend a lot of time kind of on this inside baseball, and we don't always just step outside. It's hard not to. It's all you guys do. You're very passionate about it. I totally understand. But it's from where I'm sitting, it's like everybody's an important character in this thing, you know?
It's a matter of perspective, and look, you're new to this. You come and you see it all, and then your job as a reporter, as a writer, is to put it all in perspective and present it to the public. That's the job. And as far as I'm concerned, you missed the boat on this story as a writer. That's all I'm saying.
Well, Michael, you thought I missed the boat on the last story too.
You did, and you did. I thought you missed it twice. I do.
I guess what I wonder is, I don't sit around and go, "Hey, Michael Fremer, why are you making a video about you know, I hate this Dire Straits record?" When you
could do that. It's okay. It would be okay
I would not do that. I would never. It just doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you, Michael, want to welcome mainstream coverage into a universe that has been really a subculture?
I do welcome mainstream coverage of it. I just felt that the story that you wrote starts with a guy who's not even he's a sideshow in the story. The story is Chad. It's Michael Hobson before Chad. There's a whole bunch of people who are making great records now, who are running the business now, and this is on the side are the record stores and the used record dealers, and there's other guys besides Tom Port selling used records, special pressings of used records. You know, there are other guys besides Tom doing that, and Tom should be in the story. But you just the perspective that you saw the story from was like a funhouse mirror. That's all I'm going to say, and that's
Michael 45
person. So just saying, that's my opinion. Of
Michael 45, I know a couple times you've told me to, you know, stick a cork in it, but Do you see how they keep coming back to this guy? They can't stop coming back to this guy. I don't understand it.
Yeah, come on, Geoff. This is a bit yeah, but maybe, you know, you probably accidentally took the black sheep as the one who starts a huge article in the Washington Post. And the Washington Post is quite something. And you don't report regularly on vinyl. So when the Washington Post does such a big thing, like this article, and you start with one, maybe the one most controversial figure that shakes things up for the people who are since decades into this business, I can completely understand that.
Michael 45, you out of these three guys are relatively new to this world.
Yes, absolutely.
Why are you so sure that this is a black sheep? I mean, I know why, because you've been told that by these guys who are
that's so insulting. You're insulting him so badly.
Thank you. I can do that by myself, Michael, because that was really not a good thing, Geoff. No, it was. Of course, I do discussions. I do discussions with Stunt Rock Confusion, Patrick, the vinyl archivist, who are since decades into this business, who have own record plans, who are music journalists, and everybody says the same. And I think I understand that they are right, that this hot stamper story is simply nothing. If you go into the details, it falls completely apart as a hot stamper. This is the one thing. And the next thing, and that, in my opinion, everybody can see this who is older than 12 years. If a guy says he has never done a record that is not terrible, analog production. I mean, you've listened to analog productions. You should have known that is simply not true.
But he's allowed. But
and so
yeah,
that's
he's allowed.
That
just like Michael.
So
Michael,
you have, 1 second. You have these two pillars: the extreme importance of Washington Post, and then Washington Post does something, and then they start with him. Okay, wow. So, and I think you should understand that.
But Michael, you've spent, and I'm sorry if I wasn't trying to be insulting to you. What I was trying to say is, I hear you. By the way, I like when you say black sheep. I think the phrase sounds very good the way you say it. I just want to say that it has nothing to do with anything. But Michael, you've spent gazillions of dollars on records behind you. You are a consumer. You are passionate about the hobby. You're collecting. I guess what I just don't understand, because I don't feel personal about this, is if the guy's saying he has a record that sounds better than any record, why wouldn't you spend $100 and something on a record and hear it? And if it stinks, God, you can come on and say that on your YouTube show. That's what I just don't understand why him saying something nasty about somebody, and he shouldn't have. And I've told him that, and I don't like when people are nasty to each other.
But you printed it. You printed it, and I have it here. There is nothing where you say, "Oh, I didn't like that comment." It's not here.
Well, the way that we work as reporters, first of all, I don't write in first person. Is I call Chad up and I say, "Chad, what do you think of Tom Port? He's an effing loser." I'm sorry. That's how those things go. And Chad gets to answer and say what he wants to say.
And I give you now my personal opinion and my personal impression. Don't get me wrong. And when Chad said he's a fucking loser, you said, "Great, come on, this is great." And now I write Chad Kassem said, it's my I can't.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to write about in this world. Do you think that any major publication is saying, "Hey, could you do me a favor, Geoff? Get out there and spend like a year working on a 6,000 word story about the audiophile community and sound and music"? Of course not. I could go and do a profile of, Jason Bateman or something would take me like 2 hours and, would have the same number of readers. The reason I wrote this, I think someone nice in the comments.
That was very open. Thank you for that.
Someone very nice in the comments, a guy named John, I think. And by the way, I want to say hi to Miss You because she wanted to be mentioned. But John in the comments said, what was the purpose of the article? And frankly, the purpose really was like, you know what it's like, guys. I've spent the last year, I'm taking my 12-year-old and saying, Cal, come here, listen to this. And I'm like, he's like, what? And I go, listen to this Talking Heads record. And I put it on, and then I take it off, and then I grab another one and put it on. Listen to this one. What do you think? He's like, what? I'm like, doesn't that sound completely? That's what our lives are consumed by. When Stereo Jacks in Boston just got sold, and the guy just got in a slew of contemporary records, and I went in there, and they were like $10 for every Shelly Manne record that existed in perfect condition. And I'm sorry, folks, you can't get them now because I bought them all. That's what we're here for. And so we're here, the other day when I asked Apple, what is spatial audio? Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads, I talked to him for David Byrne Profile, and he was saying, I'm remixing these Talking Heads records for spatial audio. I have no idea what that is. That's what it's about. It's about finding music and finding music that we love and finding it and listening to it the best way we can. And so that's why I wrote that article. I hope that people in the regular world would be talking about music and what's important to them. So
when insist that I'm not in the regular world, we have to discuss another 2 to 3 hours.
We are not in the regular. I mean, I don't even know anything, and I'm still know more than most people. And you guys know way more than me. So we are not in the regular world. We are right.
Okay. I thought you mean that we are totally out of this world nerds who.
No, I mean, whoever is interested in a passion, baseball card collectors are nerds, but this is different. Music is not wine. It's universal. Everybody loves it.
Yeah, that goes without saying.
Yeah. I think we have found a way where we can, a point where we all can agree on, don't we?
What's that?
That we all live in the same world.
I live in New Jersey. It's slightly different.
That man's been sniffing on that pipe too long. Michael 45. I want to ask a question to Michael Fremer or you. I don't know, but today I was listening to this, right? Guys, I found it fascinating. This revolver box, right?
I listened to it last night. Yeah.
So I put on Here, There, and Everywhere. Beautiful song. And I put it on. And I was listening. I was listening to the whole side one, and then I get to Here, There, and Everywhere. And when the background vocals come in, it's like very distorted in my left speaker. And I turned it, I moved it, I switched around, I cleaned my stylus off, I did everything I could. Very distorted. Does anyone have any evidence that this is part of the mix? Is it my stereo? When I put on an older copy of that sucker, I didn't seem to hear it.
Okay, now wait a second. So that's the mono. You're talking about the mono.
I was listening to the stereo version in the box. There's also a mono version.
Yeah. They only sent me the CDs, believe it or not, and that's what I wrote. That's what I did the video about the CD. They never sent me the records, so I don't have the records yet. So, it was the new stereo mix you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Well, there's a bunch of reasons why that might be distorted. It could be that it's a cleaner version of the tape now, or the elements that they use to make the thing. It could have something to do with the process that, the Peter Jackson's process of separating things out. There could be some edginess to that. We don't know. I only heard what Charles Martin played at the demo. I don't know yet. But there shouldn't be distortion.
Chad, what do you think of it? Now, if that's the case, and say it was authentic to the tape, should they be taking that off? Should they be fixing it somehow? Or should that stick there? Because I don't have it on my 1970s pressing.
The only thing I can think of is what in the hell they were thinking sending Michael Fremer a CD.
I hope you don't.
I mean, that's all I could think about. Like, Michael's doing an unboxing.
I thought I was
about 15
I
minutes
was so
later,
surprised.
he realized it's a CD. I couldn't believe it.
I thought Michael Fremer is into CDs now. I was a bit surprised.
I have nothing against CDs. I have a lot of CDs. you know.
Oh, hey, that's the nicest CD I ever seen.
Hey,
Wait,
hey, here's
Why
Chad.
do you get your copy so early, Geoff?
I'll ask you. Just sometimes that happens. I write about the Beatles. Sometimes I've done interviews with Paul McCartney. Hey, more importantly, but I've never received an early copy of a record from Chad because that man is a good businessman.
Stand in line, Geoff. Stand in line.
Right? Hey, I have a question for Chad, which is on the same note, which I hopefully, again, I don't want to get too music geeky, but so Horace Silver, Songs for My Father. There's another example. And that was, I think Kevin Gray did that. It was for Blue Note. And you're listening to the last song of that, which I think is Lonely Woman, maybe. And again, distortion comes through. And I remember I wrote to the guy at Blue Note. I said, what's going, because I took it down to my cheap turntable. I kept going back and forth. And and I guess Kevin Gray said, this was what was on the tape. So any version you heard before was not authentic to the tape. It's okay. It's a solo piano song. There's distortion. Chad, what do you do in that situation? Do you fix it? Do you say, this is what we want to have in here? What happens?
Well, every situation is different, but what I do is, I hire the best to do the best, whether it was Doug Sachs or George Marino or Ryan or Bernie or Kevin. And I trust, like they'll call me, hey, we got a problem. This is the problem. I can do this, or that, or let's try this. And then we try it. Sometimes we might just pass on the record. Sometimes they just do different things. You just got to do your best. You think about everything you can think about. You spend all the money it takes. Sometimes people say, well, why are your records $40? It's because when I come to an area where I could cheap out, I go, wow, I don't want to spend that $5,000. That's going to cut into my profits. Then I'll remember, Chad, there's a reason you charge $40. And the reason you charge $40 is when you come to a point where you could cheap out, you know what I mean, and get all, worried about the $5,000, that you remember you charge enough that you can absorb that cost to where you give the people the best you can do, everything you can do. You didn't cheap out when it comes to a time where you cheap out like a lot of, So we didn't do the Horace Silver. I heard stories about that. There's rumors and stories about that record. And I heard they had to use plangent, or however you say the word, to fix that record because something maybe to do with the tape or the speed or something.
Not on the
record. It's one I didn't do, but I do know that the label that did it probably did what I would have did, is tried their best to solve a problem. And sometimes you just can't polish a turd. You know what I mean? Maybe the defect was there. Sometimes with the piano, if the speed, that warble sound, you can hear a piano if it ain't just right, a lot easier than a lot of other instruments. I don't know. All I know is we every now and then we'll have a problem, and then you just got to handle that problem. But you got to remember that you're hiring the best guys that have the most experience. And I trust those guys are going to come to me with their best solution. They come to the best solution, and then we try different things. And then, sometimes the worst thing that happens, we just pass on it. Or right now we're doing some SACDs on Jethro Tull, Stand Up, and Aqualung. Well, there's a little bit of a dropout on Aqualung. And we listened to the Steven Wilson remix, and we listened to every version of Aqualung. I got down to the original album, and it's on the original album. We can't do nothing about that. It's on the original album. And so I'm sure we're going to get a headphone listener. We'll always have somebody that discovered this dropout, wants their money back. Hey, please, let me give you your money back. Let me give you double your money back. Go buy something. Thank you. But you wouldn't believe that's why the Aqualung and now we're going back and forth with Gus. Like, do you hear that drop out? No, I can't hear it. Well, listen exactly at this spot. Then we get every copy, and we just discovered it was on the original, you know, and so that dropout was on since the original release. And
Michael 45, could I ask those guys another question, or do you want to end your live stream? I don't know what you're saying.
Of course you can. Of course you can, Jeff.
This is a very basic question, but I'm very interested in it because I think it's kind of the root of everything, which is what is, sorry, my battery's running low, for God's sake. As far as what we're listening to and how we listen and what we like and what we don't like, I'd love to hear from Michael Fremer and also Chad. None of us got a PhD in listening. How do you decide whether you like the sound of a record or don't like the sound of a record? How do you decide if this Dire Straits is the good Dire Straits or that Dire Straits is the good Dire Straits? Or, you know, it's a simple thing, but I'd love to hear about how you guys developed your ears and decided what you loved.
I just by listening. So listening to a lot of records and or listening to live music. I don't think it's good or bad. I think there are some bad records. There are some, you know, there's some records where, you know, they pushed up the bass for no reason whatsoever other than to push up the bass, and it's not what the original people wanted that made the record, but in some reissue, or they're cutting from a CD and you can hear that. But it's not a matter of good or bad. It's a matter of here's what this sounds like, here's what that sounds like. And you know, a lot of these MoFis, for example, I didn't know it was a digital master. I just heard a record and didn't like what I did. It didn't sound right to me. And the Love Forever Changes, Double 45. I didn't like it. They were not happy I didn't like it. I didn't know how it was made. I just know that it didn't sound right. It just sounded dull to me. The transients were smeared. It just wasn't good. So compared to an original sounded great. On the other hand, Blue Notes is a big fight over Blue Notes because people want that original Blue Notes sound that Rudy Van Gelder made originally. But Rudy Van Gelder hated that sound, as it turns out. Rudy Van Gelder had to do what he did to make the records playable on the clientele who bought those original Blue Notes, who were people with not a lot of money. So he had to dynamically compress them. He had to roll the bass off so it wouldn't jump out of the groove. And he had to boost it around 90 hertz so that it would sound like there's some bass on the record. That's what he did. That's the Rudy Van Gelder sound. But it's not what Rudy wanted. He hated that. So the reissues that are coming out now are giving you what's on the tape, which is what Rudy would have preferred, I'm sure. And what he did on the CDs that he did, it didn't sound so good, but for other reasons. And so people say, I want those original Blue Notes. I want this. If that's what you like, fine. But that's not what's really good as far as I'm concerned. Hey, one does this and one does that. Whichever one you like is fine. The important thing is not to tell people what they should like. That's just not of any value. You know,
well, but that's Michael. People, billions of people over time have looked to you to tell them what they should like, right?
No, I hate that. I don't want to tell them.
Isn't that that's a part of what you do? You say this is good and this is bad.
I try not to use good and bad. I mostly try to say, here's what this sounds like. Here's what that sounds like. On my system, that's all you can do it on. You can't say what's good and what's bad. You can't. So
and then do you think your system is a rarefied system? I mean, most of us, you know, I've already spent too much on my stereo system, and it's not even like 4% of yours. So how does listening to those records on your system impact what you're sharing with people and how you're advising them? And do you think about that?
I find that when I think a record sounds really good on my system, if I take it to a hi-fi show and play it for people at a hi-fi show on all different systems, there's no surprises. It still sounds really good. And if I bring comparisons for people, so you know, like I went to Japan, I brought some of Chad's Prestige, and I brought the ERCs, and I sat down with the guy that makes the Tech-DOS Air Force Zero $500,000 turntable, and I played him Chad's, and I played him the ERC. He liked Chad's better. That's fine. I sent Bob Ludwig files made from the $500,000 turntable, the Tech-DOS that I reviewed, and from the Jonathan Weiss's turntable that I have here. And Bob liked the ones that were made on the $500,000 Tech-DOS turntable over the turntable from Jonathan Weiss. That's fine. It's not like, no, you're wrong. It's like, whatever you like. I know why he liked one better than the other. I know what he liked about it. I know why Nishikawa from Tech-DOS liked Chad's Prestige over the ERC. It doesn't mean the ERC is bad and Chad's is good, or Chad's is good and the ERC is bad. They're different.
Chad, you told me with your Steely Dan reissues that you're doing, you told me this great story, which I hope is okay to share, which is the idea that you had those mastered multiple times so that you could hear test pressings before you decided to approve which one would come out. Is that roughly accurate?
Yeah, I mean, we get the original master analog tape, which is the most important, best way to start, the most natural, pure ingredients. You start, there's only one original analog master tape, and you do everything you can to get it. The rumor around the world was there was no Steely Dan master tapes, and I heard this rumor way before the fire. I heard this rumor.
Yeah.
Everybody thought that. I thought that, but lo and behold, they weren't in the location where the fire was. We got the original master. I chose Bernie because Bernie did the original Asia. So I get Bernie the original white label promo, and he gets the master tape. Normally, Kevin, Bernie, Ryan Smith, Doug, they usually beat the original first one off the bat. They usually beat them. This time, I didn't think we beat it, so we did it again. It got better, but there were some things I liked about the originals, and I'll be the first to say, it's nice to have there's a lot of great originals out there. I think the problem what happened with MoFi is people weren't comparing the MoFi against the originals. I welcome people to ABR originals against our records. I welcome, they should. I like having the original and the reissue. I like my favorite records to have one of each. But I have the test pressing. We have our own pressing plant. So we played it. Instead of listening to the lacquer, which most people do because they don't have a pressing plant, I don't like to use that as a comparison because the lacquer is so present. It's so awesome. I think it's going to cloud my judgment. I have the record pressed. I compare the original on two turntables side by side. Hey, Bernie, you did great. This song, leave it the same. This song, can you do a little of this or a little of that? He does it again. We're better, but I want you to do it again. And we've cut one side 7 times. I'm not ashamed to say it.
So Chad, just to understand this. So what you're saying is you made 7 pressings of one side of Can't Buy a Thrill?
Yeah.
And all by different guys, or was it all Bernie?
No, by Bernie.
And you are sitting there at your turntable. I've seen those 2 turntables. You're sitting there listening to them. And what is it? And this gets to the question of what is it how did you learn to listen in this way? You're listening to this record and suddenly you go, that's the one.
Well, first of all, people want to hear detail. They want to hear all the instruments. They want the sound stage to be wide and deep. And they want it to hear more than they've heard before, like the different instruments. They want everything. But sometimes too much detail is very annoying and fatiguing. So, I mean, Bernie blew the original out the door. The original sounded like it was under a blanket. But all of a sudden, all that detail and all them instruments and the clarity, it was too fatiguing. It was too much. It blew the original too far away. There's a reason the original rolled off some of that stuff because all of those instruments being bright and clear, it's too much so it's like I say, you put on a CD and even dogs leave the room, meaning you put on a bright album. Yeah, there's more detail, but people want to leave the room. You want to draw them in. You want it to be warm. You want it to be rich. You want it to be smooth, but you also want that detail. So it's a balance. And anytime Bernie makes this side better, this side suffers. So when you improve the detail, you add more bass, well, something else is going to suffer. You add less bass, it's a balancing act. And basically I'm like, Bernie, yours is better, but man, let's tone it down a bit, make it a little warmer, a little richer, a little smoother. And this is just my taste. So maybe some of my customers don't like my taste. One of the things I would say is if Michael Fremer reviews 10 albums and he gives them a great review and you buy all 10 and you like 9 out of the 10, then you can kind of go with Fremer's taste. You know, if you buy 10 and you didn't like 9, then maybe not so much. If you buy 10 Analog Productions and you only like 1, then go buy some Hot Stampers. You know, try Tom Port, try everybody. You know, find the person that you can trust and that maybe thinks and hears similar stuff. So I like it to be warm, rich, and smooth. My employees laugh. We call it WRS, you know, warm,
Yeah,
rich, and smooth.
Chad, who is also involved? Patrick asked it. It's a great question. Are you the only one who is involved?
No, I have my employees come in. And the one thing is women can hear better than men. And they don't have a horse in the race. They don't give a shit. They can talk in audiophile lingo. You get a woman to come in, you don't show them what's what, you A/B it, and you listen. And you better be ready for their answer. You might not like it. You know,
women can hear better than men. Okay, that's interesting. Never heard that.
You know that? They also pack records better. Every pressing plant in the world, it's the women doing all the packing, all the detail work. Guys don't do that.
So that's really interesting. I just want to, Michael 45. Can I just say one thing? I just want to apologize to your viewing audience. So
no, it's okay.
I think
looking it's YouTube. You can do whatever you want, Jeff. It's YouTube.
No, it's not. But I just want to say this. I feel badly about the way. First of all, this is very interesting. This is like what I like to talk to these guys about, because it's very interesting to get inside and understand how the sausage is made. Because I don't think many people understand that, and I think that's what you do, Michael 45. But what I'd like to apologize for is I think all this talk about better records and Tom Port, you know, I was kind of ready a little bit for what was going to occur because I've been hearing from Chad and Michael and a little bit from you that how strongly you feel about his attack on Chad. And also I watched your video the other day where you said, he says this, I won't even listen. And I just think to myself as like a normal person, I'm like, God, this guy has a passion for music. How could he not want to hear these, you know, these records? And I think maybe it was a little too heated. I don't know. But I feel like I was the only person like defending this guy who I don't really have a relationship with. I don't have a connection to other than the guy was in my story. And I also believe in one principle that he follows, which is like, you can't really tell anything until you listen to it. So I don't care who it is telling me this. Until I hear the thing, I can't really tell whether it's good or bad. And then when I hear whether it's good or bad, it's only my opinion, right?
I can answer you that. I can answer you that for me why I'm not so interested in this hot stamper thing. I have a fantastic dealer in Great Britain, and he play grades for me. He does that. And he doesn't take $600, $400 or whatever. He just do it. And that's fine. And so I got play graded in the sport guy words. I got hot stampers. So,
but you know, the thing that's funny about this idea of original copies or not. So Jacques Dutronc, I happen to love his music. He's a French pop guy. If you know him or don't know him, I learned about him because I saw A Simple Act, the film, and Paul Fig, who's the director, loves music, and he's just got a really smart way of doing it. So it's French pop music from the 60s. And I bought this Jacques Dutronc record at that point, and it was from 2016. It was like, on paper, it was exactly the kind of record you would say was a hacky job, probably digitally sourced, would be terrible. So then I went on the internet just recently because I love that record, and I spent maybe like $60 buying a digital pressing from France. And I get it, and I put it on my turntable, and you know what? It's so much worse than that copy from 2016 that I know technically should be so much worse. And that is just a reminder. Every once in a while, I say, I mean, look at Chad, you did Pet Sounds. Is an original Pet Sounds the best version of Pet Sounds? Of course not. So you say to yourself, all of this comes down to what we listen to and how we listen to it. And there are no real steadfast rules except for what you hear.
You know what I think is the best version of Pet Sounds? It's the second record in Carl and the Passions. It's a 2-record set. The first record is Carl and the Passions, and the second record is Pet Sounds in mono that Brian Wilson supervised back in whatever year that was. That's the best sounding one. So that's my opinion.
I agree with you.
So there you have it.
We agreed on 2 things, Michael 45.
Michael Fremer.
Doesn't matter, Michael.
Any Michael.
No, I was saying that because Michael 45 said he wanted to, he unified us the first time. I just wanted to mention to him, we've now agreed on 2 things. Chad probably doesn't agree because he did Pet Sounds, but your Surfer Girl, which I heard at Michael Fremer's, just kicked such butt of that new reissue.
Oh my God, that box set is a disgrace. That, you know, it's great selection of tunes in that box, but everything was remixed. Mark Linnet did a good job with Pet Sounds and stereo, but that box, well, everything remixed. Why would you remix In My Room when the original is so beautiful and brilliant? Why would you go back and remix it and digitally master it and that sounds terrible? All that whole box is a disgrace.
And also the Marcella.
I'm 45.
Yeah.
You want to talk about some new releases, or you want to talk about all this old 10-year-old shit that people didn't buy?
An announcement to make?
Chad, you hate the Pharaoh Sanders, which I already ordered. You did a wonderful video in which you attacked your own upcoming release, right?
Hey, I tell my honest opinion on things, and I hope my customers like that, because I think that most audiophiles like great sounding records. They like the sound is really important to them. And the Pharaoh Sanders, no matter how good you like the music or how bad you like the music, it's not that good of a recording. It ain't up to the standard of the other Verves. It ain't up to the other standards of the other Impulse. It's loud. There's instruments that it just doesn't sound as good.
Who did
So
it? Who engineered it? Who was the engineer? Do you know?
You know what? I think it was Bob Simpson. It might even been one of the greatest engineers.
Yes, he was. Was it a Bob Thiel production? Was it a Bob Thiel?
I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. But I don't think it's a good sounding recording. That's my opinion. We're still going to sell the dog shit out of it. I don't really care.
Chad, why don't, when you're coming out with new records, and I'd love to hear about some of them, you do, I know what your tastes are in a sense, but I'm wondering, I like skronkier jazz, and I think there are other people who do. I know that's not your thing. What about trying to release more records of that nature?
I think I want to leave some room for someone like you to start a label and do all those crazy jazz records, skronky or whatever you call them. Let's leave some room for others to breathe, man. Let somebody that specializes in that jazz, that knows that jazz, that loves that jazz, let them do it. You know what I'm saying? People come to me, Chad, I got a great idea. And I listen to their idea and I go, yeah, that is a great idea. You know what? It's so great. Why don't you do it?
And why, Chad, why not? So also, there are so many reissues that reissue many of the same records again. And I'm always wondering this. I wondered about the small batch series that they're doing at Kraft, which is there's so many great records that have never been reissued in modern times. So I'll just name one that I love. I love Teddy Edwards' Good Gravy. I bought an original press.
That's on contemporary. I've got the original right there. I could go and listen to it. It could be the one coming up. But we still ain't did Way Out West. We still ain't did Meets the Rhythm Section. We still ain't did the Ben Webster. We still it could come. I'll listen to it. I mean, I love contemporary, and working with John Koenig and the wonderful folks at Concord, and they said that, you know, the way Verve rolls and the way contemporary, they want me to pick it. They want me to do it just like it was my label. That's what they hired me to do, and that's what they do. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to apologize for it. If you want some crazy wackadoodle jazz, you can go buy some Wax Times, or I know most of my customers are audiophiles. I know that a lot of them are great jazz collectors and they love jazz and they go deep into jazz. And that's why I decided to go ahead and do the Pharoah Sanders. You know, I decided to do the Pharoah Sanders for these people. I'm sure it will sell. Or is that the contemporary? Yeah, Fremer knows the whole story on the contemporary. We did this in 2015. The Three Amigos.
Yes.
You can't see it. It's me, Bernie, and Fremer.
Sure.
Hey, Chad, so I think we just skirted over that, but I'm going to ask you if you could to tell us about new records you have coming up. But just to make it clear, Good Gravy by Teddy Edwards is a very beautiful, clean sounding record you would love from the early 60s. It's not skronky, it's not Pharaoh. And I guess what I'm wondering is, Meets the Rhythm Section, Way Out West, those have been done a lot. Why can't you go and find one? I'm sorry.
So is Kind of Blue. We sold 25,000 33s and we've sold over 15,000 45s. So, you know, I can't help it that people want the most classic, famous, great sounding records.
And it's a different bunch of people that are buying it now. That's the great part about it. A lot of them are buying it for the first time. So you have to
I can only do a certain amount of records. We're having to go to RTI to press records. Because tell them I'll be right there, Fremer. I can only do a certain amount of records, okay? I am already having like the Jethro Tull stand-up done at RTI. I'm having a lot of records done at RTI because we can't do them all. So why? I do my favorite records. I don't apologize for it. People can disagree with my favorite records, and that's fine. It's my label and it's my customers. And if somebody wants to do other records, let them start a label. They're going to see how hard it is, and they're going to learn a lot. And I will educate them. I'll do like I did for you, Geoff. I'll spend hours on the phone. Tell them, call Bernie Grundman, call RTI, call Michael Fremer, call Craig Kalman. I'll give you the list. I'll give you the recipe. And if your records are good, I'll even sell the records for you. I have no problem. I can just do so many records, and I'm going to do my favorites. And I expect Fremer to do that. If Fremer had a record label, I expect you would do that. I expect Michael 45 would do that. And in fact, I've even suggested to Fremer, because Fremer likes a little wackadoodle stuff, man, you know, some of that. And he knows that stuff better than, he knows a lot about certain types of music, like Velvet Underground and stuff like that. He likes it. I suggest, and I've talked to Fremer, let's do a label where you pick some under the radar kind of stuff that deserves to be released. You know, we've talked about it. It would be a great idea. But the thing is right now, there's only so many lacquers in the world. There's only so many pressing plants in the world. You're not going to bump Adele's next record to put on some, you know, record that, you know, under the radar record. It's just not going to happen right now. So anyway, that's how I choose my records. I think everybody knows that. I think people, when they buy our records, they can think that Chad is picking not only good music, but music that might, the sound and the music equal. So I like the music to be at the top, the sound to be at the top, the jacket to be at the top, the mastering to be at the top, the pressing. I want it all at the top level. And every now and then I'll make exceptions. And there's going to be another impulse exception that I made that's going to make a lot of people very happy. And it sounds better than the Pharoah Sanders.
What's that, Chad? What is that? Alice Coltrane? What is it?
You just gonna have to wait like the rest and find out.
Did you hear Chad's description of how he does what he does, how careful he is in all this, and how he looks to do the best? That's why he's never made a good record ever. That's why.
Oh my God, you're going back to it. For Pete's sake. Michael, have you ever Michael Fremer, have you ever apologized to anyone over anything?
It's too funny to go back there after what he just said, which is what he's done for 30 years.
Well, again, you create a straw man where you make me have to defend somebody who you don't like, and then I get bashed. And
you should.
Gentlemen, we had great 10 minutes.
We did have great 10 minutes. Michael Fremer, have you ever? I just want to understand this because I apologize all the time, every day to many people. Have you ever apologized to anyone, and under what condition?
Many times for mistakes that I make.
But Jeff, this is not a fair question. If he has or has not, is not.
No, I have, because if you make a mistake, you have to apologize for it. You have to. I've done it in public many times.
Michael 45. I think I could be wrong, but I don't think this is angering Michael Fremer.
I thought so.
No, of course not.
No, he doesn't mind. Okay. It's okay.
Then I was wrong. Then I was wrong. I apologize, Jeff.
If you can say, well, I've never made a mistake, so I don't apologize, then you've made a mistake right there. So,
listen, I think I'm going to give Fremer a compliment. You did better. You're getting better at. You was calm and cool and collected. You lost it once, but you did a lot better than, and I.
You know what, Chad?
I wanted to do better than I did. I really. I apologize. I mean, I really wanted to be the one that spoke the less, but I can't help myself. I'm sorry, but I wanted. Fremer did. He's getting better. Me and him both have thin skin. I know, and if I criticize Fremer, I'm being a hypocrite because I could see 99 good comments about how good analog production is, and I see one fruitcake talk about some, and I'm like, You know
what it is, Chad? If somebody says, I don't like that record, that's fair enough. But if they go, Chad says he's cutting from tapes, but I know for a fact he's cutting from CDs for everything he's ever done. That will make you crazy. That's what makes you.
Yeah.
Michael, you are recovering. Chad, I think it was PTMD, post-traumatic MoFi disorder. I think he is now recovering from that. He's coming back to be the old Fremer.
Well, he's got his own website now, man.
I'm very happy with what I'm doing now. My website's doing great, and I love what it looks like, and I like the people I'm doing it with, and I'm happy to be back at the Absolute Sound. Everything is really good there. I like everything that's going on. I don't recommend switching jobs if you're an older person. It's very stressful to do what I did, but it worked out great. I'm as happy as can be.
Chad, will you tell us 2 new I just want someone in this stream to not hate me. I already know that I'm hated, but Chad, who name 2 records that are going to come out that you've not mentioned yet that we can think about and get excited about? Is there any way to do that?
Dude, there is a buttload coming. You know how much a buttload is?
I don't want you to do this thing where you tell us there's a buttload going, you're going to crap your pants. I want you to tell us 2 records. 2 records.
Hey, Michael, you know what a buttload is?
He doesn't anymore, Jeff.
Small amount more than a shitload.
I should reissue this record here. This is a hi-fi demonstration record from Capitol Records from 1950.
I've got that in my collection. I've never listened to it.
Of course you do. No, I'm not saying you should reissue this. I'm just saying it's a cool record.
Is it any good? Because I have that. I've never listened to it.
Well, you got to listen to it back with the Capitol Curve, because this is from before RIAA. So,
Chad, give us 2.
I'm trying to think. I mean, we're coming out. What I've been trying to do lately is not tease y'all with 25 one-steps that are coming out. And make y'all wait 5 years. What I'm trying to do is wait till they're really close, because like we're shipping the stand-up right now, the Jethro Soul stand-up. We had the original Island UK master, no question. Can show you the tape. Kevin Gray did it. We did the whole stand-up thing where they had to glue it. Stoughton had to glue the pop-up, do the stand-up by hand.
Are you doing it? Are you doing a Pink Label Island jacket or?
No, they wouldn't let us. They wouldn't. We had to do it on I think the green label chrysalis.
Oh, fair enough.
I think we had to do it.
Is this news or is this? We could have. It's available on your website, right? This is not news.
Yeah, but I just announced this like a week ago.
No, I want a new. We want two new
You
things.
will not get it.
You want some what do you call that? You want me to? You want some clickbait or some new information?
Clickbait. This isn't my YouTube. I just we're interested in what you're doing, and we're like, hey, in 3 weeks, what will Chad announce on the old website?
Well, we've been waiting for one of the biggest announcements I'm ever going to make in my life, but I don't have the authority to announce that right now. I mean, you can think it's BS, or I'm just trying to pull your leg, but
no, I think you're telling the truth, but I think you're not going to tell us what it is.
Well, I can't tell you what it is. You want me to lose the deal?
Yeah, if he announces what it is and he loses the deal, Geoff, you will be hated by a lot of people. Then
a lot of people.
I guarantee you.
And then this evening would have been just the warm up.
Yeah,
and then we'll know you are an agent of Top Port, because then Top Port will have all the hot stamper versions of what Chad can no longer release, and it'll be a real shit show.
I mean, we're sending out the SACD of animals right now. We're sending out the Bill Evans box. We've sold 2/3 of the Bill Evans box. It's taken us forever to get that thing back on the press. And, people are going to wait. That's fine. We had to slow down our wholesale accounts because we would have sold out of the Bill Evans if I would have let all the wholesalers buy as many as they wanted. We'd be out right now.
Yeah, Bill Evans is great, but what do you think? What do you think accounts for? I love Bill Evans, of course, but what accounts for him being like the knee plus ultra of jazz pianists? It seems like that's it's like Diana Krall and Bill Evans is like this thing.
Well, I think at least his Riversides are so accessible, and the music is beautiful. It's like light classical music, He's the way his style and playing and the songs he chooses. I mean, you gotta love Bill Evans, man. I mean, it's not hard to love Bill Evans. And I mean, look what he did on the Miles Davis Kind of Blue. I mean, he's the man as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's beautiful music, man, is what it is. And it sells. It sells. But I'm trying to think of new things. There's probably a lot of new things that I could even mention. I just can't.
No slips of the tongue, Chad.
Well, I'm not going to slip on one thing. The one thing that everybody's going to want to know is now we are doing the Ice Castles UHQR, but and nobody going to back that up.
Only insiders know what you are talking
about. Milli Vanilli, One Step.
Finally.
And, no, I there's other things. I'm sorry, Geoff. I should.
Just say no. Just say no.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
I think there's probably something like
Chet. I think we are here for 2 hours, 20 minutes.
Okay, that's good.
That's fine. And I think we even broke the record with Bernie Gruntman and Ryan K. Smith, which I would never have thought that we did that. So, and I think now it's a perfect time to wrap it up. We have seen, in my opinion, a very interesting, very spectacular stream. And I just can say thank you for doing this.
How many viewers was watching?
Around on the top 800.
Wow! In the middle of a work day.
Yeah.
I just want to say that Anita Kerr died, and everybody should know who Anita Kerr is. Everybody know who Anita Kerr is? You know who she is?
Well, she was a singer, right? And
she did all the backgrounds of Roy Orbison, all the Dumb Duty Wow, Dum 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 Dum.
Is that right?
All of her,
that's great.
Patsy Cline, everything in Nashville with background singers. It was her and her people. So she died. So
Well, thanks so much for hosting, Michael 45. I'm going to go back.
It was a pleasure. I hope you come again, Geoff.
You didn't get beat up too badly, Geoff. Come on, man. You didn't get beat up.
No. He took it like a man. He stand his ground. I think he.
Hey, Geoff, next time, man, why don't you dress up for the event?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I thought there would be no math, and I thought this is professional. That's what I was told.
We a bunch of bums. You outdid us, man. We're looking like some bums over here, but anyway, hey, it was all good.
We're happy the story is there. We're happy there's a story about it with a turntable. Believe me.
Yeah, we're happy about the success of vinyl. We're happy about things are going. There's great.
I hope folks will go and if you haven't read the article yet, go to the Washington Post and read the article and I answer
One
all
question,
questions.
Geoff. It's okay if I link it. It's okay.
Sure, of course it is.
I just want because of some maybe I'm against some laws or something. It's okay.
Yeah.
I link it in the video description down below.
And Michael 45, we'll both go walk our dogs now. And guys, thank Michael Fremer, continue filing. And Chad, thank you for.
I got so much to do.
Yeah, all right, man. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you all again. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye.